Hey everybody, how is it going? It is August 9th. I'm Cody Toombs. This is the RambleCast. And with me is Corbin Davenport.
Hello.
So how's everyone doing? Awesome. I'm happy to hear you are at least mostly doing better. Uh, well enough, at least. Um, and yeah, it's all I won't even try making jokes about this. The whole situation sounds very unpleasant.
hmm
Um, let's see. So, let I don't know anything before we get started. I will quickly throw in. Anyone watch the season, or has anyone watched all the way through The Walking Dead, like through season 11 yet? I'm just curious, who did, and how angry or annoyed are you? Feel free to mention in chat or comments. Anyway, moving on. uh, so I guess we'll jump straight into the tech stuff this week. Um, so first topic, Zoom is promising that it won't use your data for AI training without permission. You know, because
Oh,
because that would be wrong and evil.
yeah. So this was a whole thing that happened this week. So I think back in June or July, I don't know. At some point, they posted a update for their terms of service, and I guess no one noticed until it went into effect, which was July 27th. But Zoom being the video chat conferencing thing that everyone on Earth has now used.
Since
Um,
2020.
Yeah. No one was aware of it before that time, and then it became the single most used tool on Earth for like 6 months. Um, but yeah, so they updated their terms of service, and you know, always have scary language in those terms of service. Always a lot of very scary lawyer words. And in this one, there was sections where they verbatim it said you consent to Zoom's access, use, collection, creation, modification, distribution, processing, sharing, maintenance, and storage of service-generated data for any purpose and to the extent and in the manner permitted under applicable law. And it goes on to say that, like, basically, like, the data you create in Zoom can legally be used for the training and tuning of algorithms and models. It says so. Basically, like stuff you do in Zoom could be used to train Zoom's AI stuff, and this very quickly became a big story because everyone else has been doing it, right? Like Google announced a while back that they were like, yeah, we're using like data we scrape from the web to train our AI stuff. Because like, yeah, of course they are. And other companies have made similar. Um, uh, if they're not saying it like publicly, then like it says somewhere in their terms, like, yeah, we can use your stuff to train whatever we want. You've got some nice data there. Grammarly started doing this like years ago, I think. That's why I don't use Grammarly. Kind of freaks me out. And um, yeah, it very quickly became a big news story. And Zoom basically, I think it was the next day or the day after, they wrote a blog post that I have linked at the bottom of my post, and they were basically like, please don't freak out. That was like first thing, like, stop freaking out, it's okay. And in that blog post they said, we're not going to use it without your consent. um which, again, to that point, everyone was like, all right, why is that not in the terms then, right? Because like you can say whatever you want in the blog post, but the terms is like the thing you're supposedly, it should be legally enforceable.
Mm-hmm.
And in the blog post they basically explained that, like, they have an AI thing now that will generate summaries of meetings, which is, I think, something Google has had for a few months now. This was introduced at some point, and so when you, I've not used this, they say that thing is off by default, and when it's on, it like lets everyone know in the call like, hey, this is being, I don't know if it's like necessarily recorded, but like the speech to text thing is generated somewhere, and then they make a summary based on that. So all this is like off by default. When it's on, there's like a message somewhere, whatever. And they said in their blog post that like it's all off by default. Please don't freak out. And then eventually they like relented and changed their terms of service, so now it's a little bit more clear that like they don't use your stuff to train their AI, except in cases where you agree to it. So in theory, this isn't an issue anymore, but and it, like sort of wasn't to begin with. Again, this is another case of like how enforceable is the terms of service, right? Like, or I guess the right way of saying that would be like, what can you? I don't know what way to phrase this is, but like basically just another case of like companies putting just they can do whatever in the terms of service, and ultimately not a lot of people read those, and they take advantage of that pretty easily.
Not only do a lot of people not read them, but it's pretty common for a company to very casually just change its privacy policies and terms of service without notifying anybody.
Yep. And yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about that. That was just a thing that happened this week, and seems to be happy ending. I don't know. Again, Zoom's been kind of interesting since the pandemic. They've been pivoting a little bit. They basically have their own like office, like productivity suite now. They have like a Slack clone. They have some other stuff. Like they're very clearly trying to build like whatever, brand recognition, whatever they have into other connected things to compete more directly with, Google and Microsoft, where you just you pay them and they have everything, versus Zoom was just a video conferencing thing.
Yeah, so my take on this is it's a little bit mixed. On the one hand, I do think it's entirely reasonable for Zoom to basically say, look, we want to effectively anonymously use data that's happening over our networks to improve our service. That's not the most unreasonable thing to do, and the fact that they're doing it through AI as opposed to any other kind of thing, like, because AI is such a big topic in the news, obviously people are freaking out about it. I think if they had said, look, we just have some algorithms, we want to completely anonymously let these algorithms have some testing data, and none of this is going to be seen by people, and we're going to do this, that, and the other thing with it. If they had said that, I think pretty much everyone would have gone, oh, that's it? All right, non-story. And people would have mostly moved on. By admitting that it's AI, I have obviously some people are going to see the results of this, but admitting that it's AI probably a sign that people are, this is going to trigger a lot of people because they think bigger things are happening with the AI than in many cases there actually are. And who knows, maybe Zoom has some really creepy things that they're going to do with it. It's hard to tell. But yeah, this is something where I think that they kind of invited controversy. And to some extent, I wonder if maybe that was the point, because now that the pandemic has stopped being much of a topic in most workplace conversations, and obviously the Zoom usage has tumbled, as their stock has repeatedly shown, I have a sneaking suspicion that they're probably sitting there going, we need to be interesting again, let's do AI. So that may be the reason this even blew up. They may not be doing much with AI, but just by using AI as a subject, like, they were bound to get headlines. So here we are technically playing into their plan. Nevertheless, Yeah, this was Zoom powering your local Burger King drive-thru. I like that. And you know, I want to make fun of Burger King drive-thrus like audio quality, but you know.
Yeah, I was trying to come up with something.
Yeah, there is a joke there. I just don't have it coming to mind. Mostly because I feel like Zoom was never really the pinnacle of quality either. But
I've used Zoom like 3 times. I think it has not come up much.
I've used it, I believe. Well, I know I've used it in pre-brief meetings with DJI. I'm trying to think because I can't think of any other company that's made me use Zoom. They've all been using. They've all used Google Meet. Like, it's actually the thing. Like, I kind of assumed there was more Zoom usage because that was the news everyone talked about, is how much everyone was using Zoom. And no, like everyone I've been on pre-briefs with, any company that I've talked to for any other purpose, and obviously like in internal meetings that we have on Android Police, and I know you guys also at How to Geek, we're all using Meet. It's all Google Meet. Like, I'm honestly confused who's using Zoom at this point.
Yeah, like in terms of like personal use, which I think that's where like Zoom was hitting the pandemic stride with, like that for me was always just like Discord or sometimes like Skype or something. And then in terms of like work use, yeah, it's like always been like 90% Google Meet. I think I had like 1 or 2 calls about something in Zoom. I cannot for the life of me remember where those originated. And then I've had Microsoft Teams for calls with Qualcomm and maybe someone else. But yeah, it's like mostly like, yeah, all of our meetings at How to Geek or Google Chat or Meet. Chat is the Slack thing. Wow. Hard to keep track when Google has renamed this thing like 5 times.
I know. And I know this is dumb, but literally every single time I say Google Meet, in my brain I have to remind myself it's not M-E-A-T, it's M-E-E-T. I don't know why. Literally, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Where's the vegan option in this? That's what
right. I truly can't explain it, but I actually have to think this every single time. Anyway,
just
Google Meet.
English things, yeah.
Yes, English sucks. So yeah, I don't know. There's not much else to say on this. I agree, but I do think Zoom was possibly chasing headlines about as much as they were trying to announce like this new thing that they were going to do.
No, I think they like, we're just gonna like update it because I think this was posted somewhere before. So this was a little bit of a like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy moment where it's like the plans to destroy Earth have been on display for months now. I don't know what you're complaining about.
Yes.
And by the reason of like there was a blog post like immediately after, and of course it's like, all right, if you had to write a blog post to like kind of explain why your thing isn't scary, maybe it wasn't written that well.
Yeah.
Then of course they went back and changed it. But...
Yeah, and see, that's part of it too. I didn't read the original, but I have a sneaking suspicion that it probably was written kind of scary, and that's probably on purpose. I really, the more I think about this, the more I'm convincing myself. I think that this was a headline chaser more than it was like anything else. They needed people to put attention on Zoom, because they were probably never going to go full hog privacy invasion anyway. But you never know. I guess they could have. Anyway, speaking of AI and companies doing things that probably, maybe taken a step in the wrong direction, Newegg is apparently also going to dip their toes in with ChatGPT powered review summaries. In other words, the same feature Amazon has had for, I honestly don't know how long. Newegg is now going to have the same basic thing where reviews left by users are going to have bullet points, basically pro-con lists, some sort of summary of what the reviewers are saying, and pretty much that.
Yes, yeah. So basically, like when you go to a page for a PC part, whatever, it's gonna have like pros and cons that are picked out from all of the reviews. So it's not like big wall of text from a review, summary of that review, big wall of text from that review, summary. It's like all of them combined. And then like kind of just this like summary of like all of their reviews below the like pros and cons stuff. There's, I don't know if you have a screenshot. There's one in the post that Errol wrote for How to Geek. There it is.
Yeah, I've got
okay
up on screen now.
Yeah, and so he tried it and like it seemed to be okay. He noticed one kind of funny thing where like some parts show dead on arrival as a con, like something that like it is not like intended of the product. It's like just defective units happen, you got to send it back. I guess like maybe like tendency to be dead on arrival might be, but like that's not something that happens under normal operation. It's kind of funny. Yeah, I mean, like I don't think this is, I think this might be like slightly useful. This is in the same category to me as like PC part picker, which is like really nice for like trying to figure out if everything you're choosing for like a PC build like will roughly work. Like it can't take everything into account, but it can do like what's the length of the GPU for this case, how long is the GPU you picked. Okay, we can figure that part out. So this is kind of like that where this might be helpful for like just very quick base summary, but then you still need to like check everything yourself and come to your own conclusions.
Yeah, so as far as Newegg is technically kind of doing two things here separately. The first is of course the pro cons and summary for the reviews, which generally speaking I'm good with this idea. I don't see anything specifically wrong with this. The problem I do see is, what are the odds that the AI is not going to sort of read between the lines and recognize, oh, here's a review from a person who doesn't know what the hell they're doing.
Right.
That's that.
Or if I'm let's say like Intel and I decide to like astroturf the reviews for my product, I can so hopefully there's like some kind of that's built into the thing where if there's like 500 reviews that say almost the same thing, they go what's this about.
Except that's also exactly what an AI would look at and normally say, oh, that's
right.
A perfect sign that this is legitimate.
Right.
So yeah, there's this is definitely one of those things where it can go horribly wrong. Like, it's going to be good in a lot of instances. It's not hard to get this stuff right, but it's also going to go very, very wrong in at least a few instances. And people will find ways to game this system, which that kind of screams that there's going to be problems. So yeah, I'm a little mixed on this one. I think it's a good idea, but they're really going to need to have like actual humans looking over the results from time to time just to double check things. And especially any product that is apt to have people trying to game the results. So that's the first part of this. They don't mention details in the Verge article, at least not appreciably so, but they do mention that it's going to happen. Apparently Newegg is also going to integrate AI into its custom PC builder tool.
I thought that already happened.
Maybe it did.
or
Oh,
was
sorry.
it an?
The sentence reads, Newegg also integrates AI into its custom PC builder tool. So yeah, I guess it has already happened.
Yeah, I think that was a few months ago. Uh,
Yeah, they have a button that says build with AI and with a beta tag above it. So yeah, it's
it
obviously
was March. It looks like.
okay.
Yeah, and PC Gamer did an article where they were like pointing out some of the results were a little bit funky. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, like I don't. That's one thing where I'm like not sure how like useful that would be, because like I know the concept of this is like you're staring at the list of parts and you're like, all right, where do I go? What am I supposed to do here? It's like trying to build a Lego set, but there's no instructions. You just kind of have to wing it. But like we have a solution for that, which is like go to one of the many part lists that exist where like people generally know what they're talking about, and they've made a PC in like this price bracket, this one, and then you just you tweak stuff from there. Like that's how I built my first PC. Is like I found someone who had a list, and I was like, okay, this is good, but I need to change like two things, and then I bought it, and it's fine.
Yeah. So I used to build computers all the time. Granted, this is going far enough back that I obviously like the knowledge and understanding is still applicable, but I've been buying laptops for so long now that I don't know the current like status of each of the types of components, like exactly what connector everything is using, or well, which connectors are used by which part, or what. Sorry, the current generation is the term I should be using. Anyway, so yeah, I would have to spend a little time researching and like catching back up on a few things before I could really figure this stuff out on my own. That being said, what stands out to me most is I feel like AI in this instance is very likely to make a lot of mistakes that what you really just need is a smarter algorithm, like not smart in the AI sense, but just well built. You need a well built algorithm where somebody basically sits down and says, okay, here are the specs and details for this specific type of thing. It will not work with these kinds of things. It absolutely is designed to work with these other kinds of things. And you just need an algorithm that is good at basically sort of combing through those specific things and piecing it together. And so when you make a choice of a particular part, it should just be able to say, okay, you've chosen this. Now here's the limited pool of things that you can pair with it. Like, that's what you really need. You shouldn't be relying on AI to do this. You should be relying on an actual proper algorithm.
Yeah, this is more of a like Wolfram Alpha like use case than like a generative AI, where like you just got like a bunch of like constraints, most of which are numbers, right? You got your, which I again, this is kind of like how PC part picker works already, but it doesn't know everything. But like like I've got you got average FPS for this game, that's a number. The length of the parts fitting in the case, those are all numbers. Maximum wattage of all the parts, those are numbers. So there's
you can obviously also they're not numbers per se, but they almost kind of are. Like what generation of a protocol, what's the specific like pinout design that would make this thing or that thing incompatible. Like they're not numbers per se, but
compatibility, like
and some of this stuff obviously, like some of these things would be hard to put into a classic relational database. Not impossible. I mean, it's maybe kind of a complicated schema, but you could fit this stuff into a relational database, but it would be better in like an object database, a NoSQL style database. Honestly,
that's something that Newegg that's like Newegg's strength. Like, for as shitty of a like service and company it is,
now
like their website and like the granular details you can filter down to are really great. It's like they have all that data in a database somewhere. So
Yeah, they just need to build their tool to be better at that. And I'm saying this without actually having used it, so I don't know. Maybe it does do this, and or did do this, and I just don't know it. And logically, this doesn't mean that you couldn't use AI in this sort of a tool. Like, let the AI say, within the things available, build me a computer that fits this specific price point. Like, that would be a reasonable use of AI in this instance. But I have a sneaking suspicion, because people have tested it, they're, obviously, and if the results are not that good, it's probably a sign that this is problematic. They're probably doing this the lazy way, rather than building out a good AI that actually takes into account the constraints.
Yeah, or their thing is it's just like a Mechanical Turk thing. Like, they've got like Linus from Linus Tech Tips back there, like, oh, what they type in. All right, just gonna drag all the. Here's the same starter PC I used for the last question because it's close enough.
And honestly, that's what so many people do anyway. They're really, like, a lot of the builds out there are pretty much off of the same, like, couple dozen starter kits, effectively. Like, here are the parts that everyone agrees are really good, they're really popular, and they sell in extremely high numbers. And from there, it's like, okay, oh, you need a better GPU than this? All right, well, here's 5, they're all better, pick one of those. And, oh, you don't want to use RAM from this company? Okay, well, here's the other company that we'll recommend instead. Like, this is how most builds kind of go.
Yeah, and one of the things that's also difficult to like quantify is like the cost over time, because I definitely ran into this with my first PC, where like when you go low enough, there's like no upgrade options later on, right? Like, you pick the lowest thing, you're out of, you picked a cheap a power supply that doesn't have a lot of power, so as soon as you slot in a better graphics card, that's got to go to, like, oh, the CPU you picked, it's using a platform from like 5 years ago, there's nothing new there, so as soon as you need to swap that out, you need a new motherboard.
Okay, so
again, that's something where, like, ideally you'd have a human who has a awareness for these kinds of things, like helping with stuff. But
playing devil's advocate on this one for a second,
that's unavoidable. That's unavoidable at like certain price points. Yeah.
Oh, well, okay, yes, there's that. No, the devil's advocate I was going to play in this is, a lot of people talk up how great it is to be able to do upgrades. I can think of so few people who ever actually upgrade anything. I mean, I did very occasionally, but it was usually just video cards. I don't remember. I always bought CPUs and motherboards with the express intent of being able to replace them in the future. Never did it once. In fact, I even bought a dual CPU motherboard one time and never bought the second CPU for it. I did try to get one once, but that different situation. So yeah, I think a lot of people really, they mostly just need enough that they can upgrade the GPU, and after that, oh, and of course, like, putting in more hard drives. That's the other thing people tend to do.
Right.
But yeah, I don't think people really do a lot of upgrading after this. Did you?
I mean, sort of. I know, like, I upgraded my computer maybe like. Why? Well, see, I also did the thing where, like, at one point I wanted to, again, I hit that limit where, like, I don't have a lot of upgrade potential, so I took most of that build and gave it to a family member. And I kept like 2 parts, and that was reused for my upgraded PC. So I done a couple upgrades, yeah. And I think like the first one of those was like I put in a new graphics card, and then I think I changed some of the storage, and then the upgrade after that was like new motherboard, CPU, everything. But keeping the graphics card, that was like the main thing I kept.
Yeah. The closest I think I ever really got to it is there was one computer that it's one of those things where you have to ask the question, did you build a computer, did you upgrade? I harvested like 3 parts out of an old computer when I built a brand new one. I'm not sure if you really count that though as an upgrade. To me, that was building a new computer and just not having to spend on the new parts at the time.
Right.
Also, hello to Carson and David. Nice to have you guys here. And of course, talked to Austin earlier. Also, Carson, thank you for joining the Patreon. I saw that sometime after the stream had ended, so obviously did not mention it at the time, or the previous stream. Anyway, so I don't know. Is there anything else we want to say on the Newegg thing?
Nope.
Okay. Well, you have plenty of things to say, Corbin. So many things, in fact, that you've opted to start your own site. Well, sort of. I have it on screen. I will let you start talking about that.
Yeah, so I made a newsletter / blog thing. Like it's a Substack, but I'm treating it more like a blog where I'm just writing. There's not like a schedule. I'm not like summarizing stuff from other places. So not really like the format's not a newsletter, but it is in fact delivered via email if you want to do that, and it's hosted on a platform mostly intended for newsletters. But yeah, like I've kind of struggled with like over the past like year or two of like I'd like somewhere to write stuff, but it is difficult to do that in a way where like people look at it. And kind of the solution to that now is just bombard their email. That's really the only fix. So that's what I've done. This is a newsletter. It's called The Spacebar at spacebar.news, and you can subscribe via email to get the articles in your email. I personally do not do that with newsletters. I prefer to take the RSS feed. There is an RSS for this. I even put it in the little header bar. So you can, it should show up if you put in the website in a reader, but there you go. And there's also a Mastodon account, which I don't think is fully working automatically yet. I need to figure that out, but yeah. So I went live with this on Monday night, and I know a lot of times when people do this, they like set up the newsletter first and like try to get people to subscribe. But I wanted to try to like establish a vibe, because I still don't have like, I was struggling to try to like write the about page for this because I don't really know like what I want it to be, besides just like editorials about tech, and like maybe I'll do some like product reviews at some point, like just talking about stuff I bought that I like, not necessarily standard review stuff. And besides that, I also want to put some like historical tech retrospective stuff on here, because I have this whole Tech Tales podcast where I've done hours and hours of research and work, but that's in an audio format that isn't like easily discoverable. And of course, like some people don't like podcasts or can't listen to podcasts, whatever. So if that could be in another format, that'd be great too. I've shopped Tech Tales episodes to other sites before, and I think to date there's only been 2. I think they were both at How to Geek. I turned the episode on Adobe Flash into an article there, and I think one other one. The General Motors EV one, but and like those did pretty well. But I probably moving forward, I'll dump them here instead. And the first two articles, one of them was a piece on VisiCalc, which was like the first mainstream spreadsheet application, and also by most accounts the first example of a killer app, like something that's so good it like sells the hardware it's made for. And that was good. And then I also wrote an article about Brave Browser, which is something I've wanted to write for a long time, because I would complain about Brave Browser, and then people would be like, "Why don't you like Brave Browser?" And then I'd have to like explain a couple things. So I wrote an entire thing that's like, here's all the reasons I don't like it. It's not a complete history of Brave Browser. Like, you can go to Wikipedia for that. This is just like a couple things, how I feel about them, um, and at the end is kind of just a catch-all of like stuff I don't want to like go into super detail about, but like exists. And
It dawns on me it'd be hilarious to do a Tech Tales of Brave Browser.
oh man, I mean, maybe I think
No,
that's in
don't.
my list.
I'm.
I think
This
yeah,
is a
I think
joke.
that was
Don't actually do that.
no.
Not at
Yeah,
least
like
not
it's
yet.
not. It's
Maybe the
yeah,
day that it dies. Go ahead, but
sure, yeah, and yeah, and the Brave Browser article just went haywire. In hindsight, I should have expected that, because I have like kind of an okay following on Mastodon now, and there's nothing Mastodon likes more than like advocating the use of Mozilla Firefox and like shitting on homophobic people, and that's what this article does. So it went it a lot of people posted on there. I saw it got posted on Lemmy, and it had a bunch of comments. Like when I looked at the comments, it was like 200 comments. Um, and it got on Hacker News. Unfortunately, uh, it's not a good place. I never want to. Don't ever look at Hacker News comments. Jesus. Uh, I saw a couple people put it on like Twitter and stuff, and did get some hate mail, in terms of like a lot of the some of the comments were like, I don't know what. So basically the article, you could read it, but my main points are just like Brave Browser, the company behind it, was founded by Brendan Ike after he got not fired but like pressured out of leaving Mozilla, because he briefly became CEO, and previously he had donated to a organization that was trying to end same-sex marriage in California after it was already legal. And so obviously that was not a nice thing to do, and he did not apologize whatsoever, and he's just kind of been a dick about it ever since. And then I went into the explanation of Brave Browser having like their own cryptocurrency that you like very slowly accumulate if you just use the browser normally, and it's also what powers their entire like ad infrastructure. Like they have an entire like advertising network that's based around uh, serving you ads that pay the publisher somewhat and pay the user somewhat, and I kind of outlined why that's dumb.
yeah, the
And
supposedly but not really supporting sites. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a scam.
that's a whole like basically how, again, how it works is like Brave blocks ads, and then it will show you ads. It doesn't replace ads in the page. That was something they talked about doing when they launched it, and then everyone hated that, so they didn't do that. So instead you get ads on like the new tab page, you get like notification ads, whatever, and those give you a small amount of like money that you can give to whoever you want. If a site, so again, sites have to opt into accepting this currency, and then you can sort of like tip them the money, whatever. um, it's very stupid, and gives very small amounts. Like I was looking at one Reddit thread where people were saying like, yeah, after using this for like a year, I got like the equivalent of $10, something like that. Like it's just it's not a lot. But
To be fair, I don't think anyone should expect to get rich off of
Right.
just using a browser, but
Right. Yeah. And so yeah, that again, I read the article if you like want to know all the details, but I outlined that. I went back in their like archive of press releases and like looked at every single crypto company they've partnered with, because at some point this became like the crypto browser. And of course, like found out, they had a widget on their new tab page that like asked if you wanted to like connect your FTX account, and that was there for a year. You know? So just like sort of endorsing FTX that whole time, and I don't think there was ever an apology or anything from that. Just a bunch of little stuff like that that adds up. So yeah, I published that, and a lot of the it went viral basically, viral in terms of like what I was expecting.
yeah.
Obviously not like 2 million views or anything
I,
like
I
that.
like to refer to this as microviral.
Yeah, my Mastodon notifications were hard to read for about a day. That's where I would put it. I could still keep up, but it was difficult. And a lot of their response was like positive. I had a lot of people who were like, I didn't know about any of this, thanks for telling me. Which is like, that was the point. Like, my point is like, don't use this, here's why you shouldn't use this. So I'm glad I'd achieved that goal to some degree. um, you know the Brave browser fandom did find it, and like there were a couple like small things I was like a little bit off about that I appreciated them pointing that out so I could fix it. A lot of people just coming in and like saying that my criticism of Brendan Ike shouldn't be relevant to Brave browser, and to those people I say fuck off. uh, I don't care. It kind of is, because like this is very much his baby, but okay, sure. Um, a lot of people coming in, including my mentions, which I really don't appreciate, being like, I don't know why you're on him about his political beliefs. And it's like, I that's not a political. I'm sorry, like we should be past the point where like this is up for debate. I would hope so, but apparently not. Um, and I did have to close the comments on the article itself. Reminding me back in the days where I was at Android Police, and eventually the comments got too toxic and someone had to close. But
Yep.
I was fine with the people coming in saying I was wrong. That's fine. But eventually, people started making accounts and just calling me slurs, which is something that did not happen at Android Police, as far as I remember. Did get called names sometimes, but
To some extent, I think the two are almost synonymous now. But yeah, I've had a few slurs pitched at me for things, which is always weird because I really never put opinions. I mean, very rarely did I put any sort of
right.
opinion in my posts. And
Right, you're not like taking a stance against like conservatives with your like APK teardown of like the Google app or whatever,
right.
or a review of a camera. Yeah,
Though I was actually accused a few times of things like that because some random weird person didn't like that a thing existed or was being done, and apparently this made me a Google shill, and it's among other
right.
things.
The
And it's
Google,
like,
yeah, constant accusations of being a shill.
yeah, well, constant accusations of being a shill. I was accused of some really weird stuff once when I brought up that that YouTube was experimenting with, or they were going to experiment with basically including like shopping links for stuff mentioned in videos. And part of what I brought up as sort of a, this makes sense because look at the like makeup gurus on YouTube. Those people are making huge money off of this stuff, and YouTube would probably like to get involved in this. And I got some weird accusations and some people calling me some strange stuff because of that. It's like, what is wrong with me mentioning that like Jeffree Star, I think is the name. Like, what's wrong with me mentioning that this person exists and their channel says a lot of makeup? Like, where did I go wrong for you?
Right. Um,
Yeah. People
yeah,
sometimes you get weird people. They take a lot of things very very seriously.
yeah, and David said, I thought it was a good article. Thank you. Did anyone make decent arguments defending Brave? I feel like crypto people are always pissed off. I mean, like some of them like were okay. Like one, I did say in the original comment, I said that like many people inside and outside of Mozilla like didn't want Brendan there, and based on the information available, that was technically incorrect. I didn't have, I had like a handful of people at Mozilla who spoke out at the time. Of course, I know from experience of working at a company that the number of people unhappy with something and the number of people unhappy with something and talking about it publicly on Twitter are can be very different things. But based on the evidence, sure, that's a point I was willing to concede. So I changed that. Um, a lot of the points are sort of like whataboutism, like you know, why are you saying like because at the end I say like if you know care about privacy, like just Firefox or like maybe Vivaldi. But of course, like Mozilla has had a lot of issues in the past. Vivaldi, I don't think has really had any like super high profile stuff, but they haven't been around as long. So of course, people are like, why are you telling people to go to Firefox when they've had like privacy issues? But like really Mozilla's problem is just that they piss away money on things that don't matter. Like that's been their main problem over the years. And like occasionally they've like turned on like analytics without asking or something, but it's like I think most of the time they're coming from a good place. It isn't quite the same comparison versus when you look at Brave browser where it's something that is like completely intertwined in the crypto industry, which itself is like just built up on Ponzi schemes after Ponzi schemes of like companies that are overvalued. Like it's coming from a very different place. So like, yeah, none of these companies are perfect. Um, like right now, I'm using Google Chrome. I've been meaning to like maybe try to switch to something else, but like Google, obviously is not is monopolizing web and advertising industry through Chrome, whatever. But like Chrome itself is like a mostly unoffensive product.
Hmm.
Like yeah, it does like exist
There's
and
some
doesn't
dubious
have
privacy aspects, and
right.
and yes, it is by its nature kind of forcing the industry into certain directions and paths that serve
Right.
Google better than it serves other people and other technologies.
Right.
Obviously, it'd be kind of like this is a weird way to describe it, but it's kind of like if some company was very very powerful in the tool industry and they decided that uh, hammers and nails are bad for business, they don't want those, so they're going to push everything to kind of be screws. Well, that does work for pretty much everything. There's not much you can do with a nail that you can't do with a screw. That being said, it's not necessarily the right choice for everything. Blah blah blah. So yeah, Chrome kind of has a little bit of that, like we're going to force the industry into this kind of condition, and it's
Right.
not necessarily the best thing, but it's also not necessarily terrible that it's happening.
Yeah, and again, they've done. I mean, I've complained about this like in articles at Android Police and XDA and whatever else, where like yeah, they've done some things that like I really don't like. Like again, that whole where the one I point to constantly. Maybe I should write an article about this. Was when they basically created a web API and tried to get other browsers on board where the URL and the address bar could change because they were tired of like Google AMP articles looking weird. So you're like, what if there was like kind of a like normal way for websites to change how they appeared in the address bar so like AMP could stop looking weird, but like no one else implemented that because it only benefited Google. And I think that might have got dropped at some point. I'm not entirely sure. Um, but like that was a whole thing that I really didn't appreciate. So like yeah, the other options like aren't perfect either, and like again, Google does have like an effective monopoly, so I'm not like you know saying they're in a good position either. But like they're all coming from different places, and it's also worth looking at like how each browser is like what is it trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important. We're like, Google Chrome exists so that Google can like maintain the web as a stable platform, right? Because like they made Chrome because they were becoming a web company, but they didn't control like whatever Microsoft did with Internet Explorer. So they're like, what if we just make our own web browser and we can like push browsers forward so that our services get better?
Right.
So like again, not perfect motivations there, because like then you know Chrome only has privacy to a limit to where advertising can still exist. Like Google has now spent like 2 years building an entire like advertising tracking thing into Chrome so that they can phase out third party cookies, even though that solution is like slightly better than third party tracking cookies, but like still not what I would call privacy preserving in any way.
No.
So it's like definitely it's to a point, but like I do think that like a lot of the people working there are coming from like a place of like, we're trying to just make like the web apps better and more powerful. And then you look at like Mozilla and like, yeah, they've done a bunch of stupid stuff, and they've spent time and money and energy in a lot of things that didn't work out or just weren't that good. But like they're very clearly still coming from a place of like, how do we make the web experience better with like what we have to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that when like one thing I found while researching something else a couple months ago was that Firefox has a picture-in-picture video mode, and there is a flag in HTML that is supposed to block that from working. So if you have a web page that you make and it has like a video player in it, you can tell the web browser like, this should not ever go in picture-in-picture. Don't let them do that. Maybe because they want to like show an ad in front of the video first, and they don't want it to like move away from that, or breaks a layout, something, whatever. So Chrome respects that, and Edge and stuff too, but Firefox does not. And there's a thread on Firefox's like issue tracker thing where there's just a list of web developers going like, this breaks my page, like I'm trying to serve ads here, Mozilla. And the Firefox devs are like, no, this should be a user control. So like again, like there's a lot of things like that where I think they are coming from a good place, and Mozilla is still like participating in like web standards development and seeing like what can be improved, talking to Google and Microsoft and stuff. So I think like those groups are coming from a good place, and they're like still doing the development work. And then you look at like what Brave is doing, and a lot of their work has gone into how do we monetize the web differently, and their solution is crypto that is like creates more work for like sites and doesn't really pay anyone like a lot of money, and is kind of complicated,
Except they get a lot of money out of it,
right?
Which is kind of the typical crypto scam, or one of the many typical crypto scams.
Yeah, and like a lot of their development has, because Brave is not participating in like the web as a platform because they're just Chromium. So their focus has been like, what are some like privacy features we can add in, and some of the privacy defaults are like really good, but a lot of it is like basing off other people's work, or like I just saw a bunch of websites covered Brave browser when they're like, we're not going to implement Google's Google proposed some API that was like a way to make web pages like not modifiable at all for cases when you need like no extensions like interfering with whatever, which like that's bad. And it's like unclear exactly what the details of that would be if it was implemented, but like Brave was like, we're not going to do that, look at us, like we're going to do a press release, we're not going to do that, because like whenever it rolls out, that's like a couple lines of code they can change. So it's like it's stuff like that where like a lot of their good work is just kind of like, yeah, like I'm sure that's good, but it's coming from a different place.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, a lot of the criticism was like, look at what Mozilla did like 3 years ago. That's bad. I'm like, yeah, but like again, they have a different perspective that I can like appreciate to an extent. Again, Mozilla does a lot of things I don't like, but it's a very different conversation than with Brave. And like I think that was really the only like complaint that was like really valid. Some of them were like, oh, you're making Brave guilty by association when I'm like listing all the companies they've worked with to an extent. It's like, like I guess, but it's like that's kind of, you know, like I'm sure
That's
if you know Google, I'm sure like works with a bunch of like shitty company, but it's like different discussions, um, and it's you know, um, so- and
the
and
guilty
and
by association thing. That's one of those. It's such a weird takeaway. I mean, don't get me wrong. If it obviously, I hate making this political, but it's sort of like the whole thing where people love throwing around the Jeffrey Epstein and look at all the people who flew on his jet. Well,
right.
look, some of these people literally just caught a ride. Like, this is not the weirdest thing. And
Right. Some of
ironically,
them knew about the child sex slaves.
yes, some of them definitely knew.
Probably some of them didn't. Yeah.
A lot of them obviously didn't.
Right.
And even if they, just to throw, sorry, I want to be clear, I wasn't starting that sentence of even if they did know. That's not at
Yeah.
all what I was about to say. Um, what I was going to say is, like, if they had not flown with him, they would have been chartering their own private jets. So, look, if you want to talk about like inefficiencies and wasting money and being bad for the environment, like you'd slap them for those things if they don't ride with him. So,
Right.
like there are aspects to this where
Just rich people in general should not exist. That
yeah,
should be your argument, not yeah.
that's kind of what that argument becomes. And that's not going anywhere positive, obviously. So,
Yeah. Like my, when I brought up the FTX thing in my article where it's like they had a widget that was like kind of, you know, telling you that FTX exists and you can link it to your Brave wallet or whatever. Like they took that out like almost as soon as FTX exploded, which like partially like okay that's good, but also like FTX became completely non-functional after that happened. So it was also kind of a like we need to take out this broken
yeah,
functionality in our
exactly.
web browser now. But like I, as far as I could tell, like they never said like, hey, we're sorry we like kind of sort of promoted their service for a long time. Like that would like if they did that, like honestly, I don't know if I would have much of a hill to defend there because like no one really looked close enough into FTX
Yeah.
to know if it was an issue or not before it happened. So like I'm not gonna like say I don't know why you didn't closely inspect the secret financial information of like the company you work with. But like again, after the fact, I would help if you're a reasonable company. Be like, hey, sorry, hope you didn't set up an account. Maybe here's some free like Brave tokens, whatever, something. I don't know. But
Well,
like nothing like that ever happens. That's how this how the crypto industry works. They kind of just move on to the next scam.
yeah, and this is actually kind of a famous problem on YouTube channels too. There's so many YouTubers who, very understandably, they don't have the resources, the time, the inclination, or the skill to go looking into every sponsor that comes their way.
Right.
Uh, so yeah, sometimes they end up.
If a company is sponsoring a YouTube video, they're already a scam. So you don't even really need to research it.
I mean, not necessarily. I mean, just because
It's true. Just a lot
NordVPN
of
is
them.
doesn't mean that
Yeah.
Squarespace is.
Yeah.
And what it, the that one where you bought like Scottish titles or whatever, I forget the name of that one.
Yeah,
Um,
I know what you mean.
yeah, you can become a Scottish lord. Bullshit. No, you can't. What? Why? If they can do that, why can't regular Scots do this? Huh? Yeah. Um. Yeah. It's stupid, obviously, but
Yeah.
this is something that not all YouTubers have the ability to go looking into each and every one of these things. So I understand that, I respect it, and at the same time, it's like, yeah, but you also took lots of money from them, promoted this on your channel. When all the stuff comes out about it, maybe you could, disclose, hey, I'm really sorry. I promoted this. I didn't know. I would love to have known if anyone has a better way for me to find out about these in the future before I accidentally promote them. Please point it out. I would appreciate the help. Like,
Right.
there you go. That's your message. You could literally, for a popular YouTube channel, if you did a video, literally just the words I just said plus like, a minute of fake crying, you would have just made $1,000. Like, just from views alone, you made $1,000. Good for you. Like, I just did your work for you, and made you more honorable in the process.
Yeah. So again, like, I most of the other arguments were just like you're biased against crypto. It's like, sure, yeah, that's fine. I'll take that. Or like again, a lot of it because I led with Brendan Ike being a homophobe.
Yeah.
Not just because I think that's like should be one of the main things like you should be aware of, but also because like that's how it got founded. Like I'm telling you, sequence of events. He got canned out of Mozilla and then immediately went and made this. Like this would not exist if Brendan and I could be a normal person. He would probably still be at Mozilla. So again, and then a lot of the comments were just about that. And again, don't think that's something that's up for debate. Yeah, and a lot of the other stuff was like about the advertising specifically, like no other web browser like pays users or like is trying to come up with a more like equitable solution for supporting websites or whatever. But it's like if like if you want to support a website you like or person, just pay them. Like that's I'm sorry, like that's there's never gonna be like a different solution here. It's ads or it's just you pay them. Like those are the two options we have. Like if you want to wait for Brave to like you slowly accumulate like $3 and then give that to someone, sure, but that's there's not like a shortcut to that. And again, I don't think Brave is coming from this from like a egalitarian thing of like we want to fix this. They're coming from a like we're building an ad network. That's what they're doing.
Uh-huh.
So again, that's where I come back to the like, yeah, Mozilla and Google and stuff have a lot of issues. I think when it comes like, I understand where they're coming from more, and I think it's much different than this conversation. So anyway, like, yeah, I mean, I just wrote that. I didn't think it would take off at all. It's kind of shocking.
I mean, it was, you did kind of rage bait.
I rage baited and then I said
it?
like stop using Brave browser, like that was the title. So obviously that invites some like why should I stop? But yeah, and again like that's something I was meaning to write as like a blog post for forever, but like I know if I put on my blog like it's gonna get 20 views.
Yeah.
So but again I'm glad it was on this because now that's built a subscriber base. So there's people now who have put this in their RSS and email and stuff. Like if I go look at my dashboard, Spacebar has 75 email subscribers now. And I think some of those were people who like subscribed with like a fake email and then commented a slur, but not all of them. So
it's a wonderful group of people.
So yeah, go check it out. Again, I'll put a link in the chat. But yeah, you can just read it in your browser. You don't have to give anyone anything. You can put your email in, and you get articles as emails, or there's an RSS, or there's a Mastodon account. So yeah.
Indeed.
And again, like I don't have any set schedule for these. I'm definitely not going to spam your inbox because I will not have the spare time to write stuff for this on a weekly basis, probably because I have too many side projects. So, just whenever it happens. And I have checked Brendan's Twitter account a couple times to see if he noticed this. So I think it'd be very funny because he did like barge into my Twitter mentions one time when I was complaining about Brave a different time, and that was like pretty weird. I'm sure he's one of those uh, people who has like a Google alert for his name or whatever, or just searches his own name, which I do. So I'm not gonna, you know, labor him too
S-
much on that.
Corbin,
Uh,
stop harassing Carl Pay.
yeah, yeah, and
We know
of
you're
course I
subtweeting him right
yeah,
here.
and of course I go go to his Twitter blue verified, bringing out the hits, and I go to his likes, and it's like anti-vax shit. Like conservatives are so predictable. Like, of course he's anti-vax. What was I expecting?
Yeah.
Such a dork.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but there is a degree of not surprised in this. So yeah, anyway, go check out spacebar.news. And if you like what Corbin is doing, check out his Patreon. Oh,
Well,
huh?
kind the Patreon is like, I don't is just for like the software stuff. But I guess
Oh, okay.
if you want to pay me there, sure. I get like, you know, kind of keeping those kingdoms separate for now, because if I had a Patreon, same issue I was running into with like Tech Tales, where like if I'm taking people's money, they like generally expect some kind of like additional content or something, and I do not have enough time to produce both, you know, what is normally expected content and exclusive content. Like if I did that for Tech Tales, I'd be like doubling the amount of Tech Tales episodes, and half of them would only be listened by like 5 people. So again,
Yeah.
if like this continues to like get really big, then like I will do the newsletter thing of like, give me a couple bucks a month, you get like another article to read or something. But right now, I'm just accumulating people's email addresses, and we'll
Yes.
see what happens.
So, well, since you're arguing with the Patreon aspect, you've basically killed my transition into the next topic.
I'm
But at
sorry.
this particular moment, I will take advantage of this to say, thanks again to Carson, David, Austin, and Diablo for being Patreon people for me, and many thanks to you guys. You do help keep the channel alive. Um, Also, on the subject of Patreon, Patreon has joined slightly darker sides with they're sort of teaming up with Spotify. So the short version of this is pretty much just right there in the title. Patreon creators can now publish subscriber-only podcasts on Spotify. Corbin, take it away.
Wow.
I don't know. I
Um,
didn't personally have of
that's fine.
a lot to say on this
So
one.
my got this fan pointing at me for like an hour, so my eyes are really dry now. Yeah. So like what? Uh, Patreon for a long time now has supported podcasts. So if you go find someone on Patreon and subscribe to them, you can, some of them do like, the podcast is only available to people who give them money, or maybe you get like an extra like episode a month or something if you're on their Patreon, something like that. Um, so that's been an option for a while, and usually they give you like, when you sign up, because I've done this for like 2 or 3 podcasts, they'll give you a little RSS feed, and you go put that in your podcast app, and that's your exclusive content, or you can listen to it through Patreon. Um, but of course, to find that, you would need to discover them first somewhere, and then go to their Patreon and figure that out. So in kind of a surprise move, Spotify is now working with Patreon. So uh, basically how this works is like, podcasts that are only available through Patreon will show up in like Spotify searches, and then when you find it in Spotify, it will let you know like, hey, you need to subscribe to hear this, and it'll send you over to Patreon. Which, that's pretty cool. Kind of unexpected, because Spotify has been building its own podcast empire for a couple of years now, where again, not only have they been buying up shows, which is like the part most people are aware of, but like they bought, I don't know if they changed the name, but oh yeah, they did. They bought Anchor, a couple of years ago, which is like a podcast host service, like where you would dump your MP3s or whatever. That's now, I think that's now Spotify for podcasting or podcaster or something. It's not Anchor anymore. Um, so they've been buying shows. They've been buying the like publishing tools and like hosting for that stuff. They're setting up like their own like advertising uh services and like plugging it into everything for the like commercialization side. Um, so the fact that they'd also work with Patreon, which is like a different, uh, you know, completely different monetization scheme. Presumably, they're not getting a cut from like anything you know get from sign up at Patreon. So kind of cool. Again, I don't entirely know if this is for like um, podcasts that are only on Patreon or how it works if like the podcast is public but they have additional content on a Patreon. I don't think it says in this Engadget article I found. Um, yeah, I think this is just for podcasts that are exclusively on Patreon. But I don't know. Maybe it shows like both because those are technically like a different feed. Like I have a podcast that I have a Patreon for, and they do normal episodes, and then Patreon members get extra episodes, and like those are two different feeds, right? So maybe it showed as two independent podcasts. I'm not sure, but anyway, kind of cool. It's one good thing Spotify's done for podcasts. Not sure if I can name many others. Tech Tales does not get a lot of listens through Spotify. I know that much.
Right. Well, RambleCast doesn't get any listens through Spotify, so I don't put it on there, which is good reason. But yeah, I'm I don't think I can go so far as to say that I'm specifically trying to fight against Spotify, but I can't think of many companies that I would be less eager to support. So yeah, there's that. And David seems to be in agreement. No using Spotify for podcasts, which I've never been a Spotify subscriber, so it hasn't been an option for me anyway. But yeah, I have not heard good things about the app, which makes me wonder why anyone wants to use it for podcasts. The only thing that makes sense to me is that people want the exclusive podcasts and they're willing to put up with the app in the process.
Yeah, I think it's partially that. I also think that like it's just because Spotify's everywhere. Like you can, start it on your phone and then move over to your computer or TV, or anywhere else.
Sure.
But yeah, like I don't want to use that for podcasts. I'm still on Team Pocket Casts.
Yeah. Every time the subject of Pocket Cast comes up, it always just reminds me how much I actually it is the least offensive of the podcast apps, but at the same time I also think it's a terrible podcast app. So yeah, I've wanted to build my own podcast app for years. It's just such a huge undertaking that I won't commit to actually doing it. But I have ideas I'd really love to put to work there. Anyway, not important here. So yeah. Anyway, this is a thing. I don't know. I'm inclined to move on.
It's good with me.
All right. So, we didn't really have much of a plan beyond this, except I really, really want to talk about Google's AI-powered code editor. Carson shared this into the RambleCast chat room earlier today, or I guess last night. And this technically is a dev topic, so I apologize to those who aren't devs, but I feel like this is... if we skip past the fact it's a dev topic, it's weird how much this actually describes a very Google kind of thing to do. So, the basic summary on this is that Google is creating what is effectively kind of a cloud-based uh, development environment. The idea being that you can basically connect to this through Chrome, or, well, let's assume it's just Chrome. Um, and in Chrome, you would have the code editor, which, according to Google, is based on VS Code, which is a Microsoft product, but it is open source and it has been used for various other things out there in the world. And it's pretty popular. At this stage, VS Code is easily like a top 3 used everywhere kind of thing. So tons and tons of web developers use it. It's super, super popular. Anyway, also inside of this thing, you can basically set up like whatever frameworks you need. If you're doing mobile development, it will include the emulator or simulator, whichever it is technically. I guess they're emulators for Android and iOS. If you're using iOS, apparently they're doing all this stuff on a Mac, so it will actually work and compile for Mac. Whereas, which for those that don't know, this is a necessity. You can't actually build iOS and Mac apps without using a Mac. In theory, you can also, or not theory, but you can also do this on a Hackintosh, but that's a licensing nightmare. So anyway, neat idea. This is a really cool idea. And of course, Google is pitching this as kind of a really good tool for sort of the developing world, where you would need higher end computers than what a lot of people have. And in theory, since this is cloud-based, you'd be running on some pretty powerful servers, so that should help. And if you're running an emulator for Android or iOS, those things are very, very system intensive. They require a lot of RAM. If you don't have a pretty fast CPU and usually GPU, they'll run really slow. And yeah, so throwing this onto a server is a really nice idea. The other thing that they're kind of pitching is this solves a challenge where sometimes installing multiple tech stacks onto a computer, sometimes there can be conflicts, there can be weird problems and bugs and weird behavior. They're presumably kind of trying to solve that with this by making it so that you're working within a virtual machine that is basically custom to what you need, and you can, when you don't need to be using that stuff, it just stays in its little container, and when you need to call it back up, it's all right there and operational again. So at first, when I read this, my immediate thought is, oh, this is a really neat idea. It's a novel product or project, and it's going to do some cool things for some people. Then I started thinking about it. I started thinking about the different aspects to this, and there are a lot of them. And I really should have made notes for this. I'm feeling dumb that I didn't. But I started thinking about who's going to use this. How are they going to use this? Why are they going to use this? And a couple things immediately started jumping to mind. First, this is all happening in the cloud. Not everyone has this issue, but a lot of large companies have a policy that you cannot have your source code for anything that's in that company going anywhere off-site, or at least off of their own computers. This is a very common thing in bigger companies, and actually even a lot of small companies. They're not big fans of having their developers putting source code out there into the world. So having it running on a cloud service where 100% of your code is going to be sitting on a cloud service, transmitting over multiple servers, yes, granted, it'll be encrypted, but I mean, it's not like we haven't heard of man-in-the-middle attacks that have been able to beat HTTPS. So, I'm just saying,
right.
maybe this is not it's not going to fly for a lot of those users. Besides, if you're working for a company that size, you probably also have a budget to afford the hardware that you need. You know, like, you're not really going to run into a big problem saying, oh, we can't get iOS devices for testing, or we can't get a Mac to build our product. Like, that stuff not really going to come up here. While I take a swig of water, Corbin, let me take a break and let you comment anywhere you'd like to on this. I didn't mean to kind of bulldoze this.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have any hot takes about this. Just that, like, yeah, cloud development is like not really a new thing. In some cases, it's a non-starter, unless it's something that, like, the company you're working for can host, right? Which is, I don't think is the case here.
No.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, I'm for like someone getting started with something, or not like something that has like those kinds of security recommendations, maybe it's fine. You know, again, like, kind of one of the reasons that the, like, cloud environments like this are so nice is because setting up an environment is a pain in the ass a lot of the time. So if you just have something that's already good to go, that's pretty cool. So
yeah, so on that particular subject, I also I started to think about how that factors in. And look, I was a Windows developer in the mid 2000s. My life was wrapped up in Windows development, and I gotta say, nothing was worse than setting up the tech stack for Windows development, because you would basically start by, like, with a completely freshly set up computer. The first thing you would do is install all of your, like, Windows security updates and things like that, of course, as you should. Then you would install Visual Studio, and then the real trouble begins, because you would then have to manually go through and install, oh god, so many patches and updates and plugins and weird little installs. I say plugins, I shouldn't use that term because it sounds like third-party stuff. No, I'm talking about stuff provided by Microsoft to make Visual Studio work the way it's supposed to with the newer versions of their stuff. There was so many installs. Like, it was, Visual Studio by itself was literally a day-long process of installing weird little patches and things like that. And if you install something out of order, wipe the computer, start again. And I'm not exaggerating. I've literally had to wipe computers and start over because the install process was incredibly untrustworthy. You very likely could bork your whole system. Not to the point that it won't boot, though in theory sometimes. But to the point you might not be able to get Visual Studio to ever start again. And no amount of tinkering or fixing registry entries or anything like that was ever going to fix this stuff. So I love the idea, in theory, of doing a virtual machine that is just custom set up for the development environment you need. Like I said, that's in theory. In practice, it occurred to me, this isn't going to come up. This is never going to come up because, first off, these VMs are all Linux based, though presumably maybe the ones that are for iOS might be Mac based. That one's a little unclear. But yeah, you're doing all this stuff in Linux, and as far as I'm aware, Linux doesn't have any development environment situations where this stuff is likely to come up, or not as much. Plus, all the stuff they seem to be focusing this on is mostly frameworks that are self-contained or additive. So some of the things that were mentioned in here were Flutter. They mentioned React, Next.js, Angular. None of these things are going to be big like self-conflicting frameworks.
Yeah, like I don't know how it works if you want like multiple versions of like, I don't know, Python
Yeah,
on
Python
on
is
your
the one
computer.
example I had in mind.
Yeah, I'm not like entirely sure how that works, but yeah, like beyond that, yeah, if you're like working on a project, you're gonna have like the list of dependencies and stuff like in your project. Like that's like not a thing that's really shared anywhere. Or again, if like you're like really stressed out about this stuff, you can just use Docker or something. Um,
Yep. And
so
and you're hitting exactly the point I was going to. I
yeah,
This is something that's already solved through Docker, or
yeah, because
other
yeah, I
containers.
did have this, yeah, I did have this issue with my image share web app, which is a PHP app, and setting up PHP on Mac really hurts you. It's not fun. I couldn't really get it to work all that well, especially when it got to like PHP plugins. I'm like, where the fuck do I put this in what folder? I don't know
Yeah.
what's happening. Uh, but I had to move that to Docker anyway because I needed my like I needed a way to deploy to my server that like I could replicate again
Yes.
because that was set up. I don't know how I did it. That information was lost, so I was like, as soon as this breaks, I will have no idea how to fix it. So I had to move it to Docker anyway, and of course the result of that was like, wow, I typed one command and the server's running. That's crazy. I didn't even install anything except Docker.
Yeah.
So
Yep. In retrospect, there are a few projects in the past that I wish I had. Well, I didn't even know about Docker for some of them, or maybe it didn't even exist. But yeah, there are a few things that I know I need to learn Docker and start using it just so I can avoid future hassles.
it's it's very nice for that project. It still scares me for other things, but
Yeah.
that was one case where it was like it was simple enough from like a architectural standpoint. Like this is a server. I don't even. There's no like database attached to it. Like I don't have to worry about like files or anything. Um, it's just like an interface for another API.
Mm-hmm.
So in my case, perfect. Almost no complaints.
Yeah.
Once I figured it out, it hurt my brain initially, but I was like, okay, I kind of understand how this works now.
So, yeah. Anyway, again, now at this point, as I've said, there's a lot of people who won't be able to use this due to like restrictions, corporate or otherwise. They won't be inclined to use this because of, they already have the hardware and don't really need to use something to get past, let's say, any hardware limitations they might have. And now there's kind of the whole like they're making a good promise about how this could be useful, but it doesn't necessarily pan out to actually be useful in the real world for some of those things. And then I also started thinking about, well, VS Code, it's really popular. People love it. But what are the three big things they're pushing here? Web development, which, great, VS Code is fantastic for. The other two things they're pushing are iOS and Android development. Do you know what nobody does in VS Code? iOS and Android development. Because, shocker, Android Studio is actually, I mean, don't get me wrong, I have some criticisms, but it is absolutely fantastic for Android development compared to anything else in the world. And Xcode, okay, I know if Zach were listening, he would have many, many words about this, but Xcode is actually pretty damn good for iOS development, especially if you were doing something with Swift UI or any of the other very interface dependent aspects of it. Is Google sitting down and porting these things over to VS Code? I don't think they are. There's nothing indicating that they are. So while they might have the emulator running, they're not going to have a lot of the tools that make coding easier. They're not going to have a lot of the features or functions that are relevant. And even if you were to do those things on your own side and then run the emulator in Google's environment, let's say that you do all the coding and then check it in with like GitHub and then pull it back down for this, something like that. Even if you're doing something in that vein, there's a very strong chance that plugins or various features that are part of the IDEs are only going to let that code compile in your own in your own environment. They're not going to work in this custom environment Google's trying to push. So that kind of, I'm sorry, but it kind of makes this a very poor replacement for doing iOS and Android development on your own system. You're really going to want to just use Android Studio and Xcode. So now, like, the use case of doing this for Android and iOS are also gone. At least I would generally think. And that leaves this for web development. That's what this is good for. It's good for web development. And show me really quickly who needs a strong computer for web development. I mean, if you need to run a big database, okay. If you need a big local database, fine. That's a perfectly valid thing. That happens. But how many people really need this for web dev? Like,
I've done that on a Chromebook. It's not...
Yeah. Really quickly, I'm finding myself questioning, like, outside of specifically a Chromebook, you can just install VS Code on any computer. Yes, it's, not the smoothest running software, but it's not bad. It's an Electron app. It's hungry, but it's not ridiculous.
It's definitely like one of the best Electron apps.
Yes. Actually, that is a perfect way to say it. It is basically the best Electron app I think I've ever used. And so I find myself again asking, like, who is this for that they can't run VS Code and a web browser side by side? I can't think of anybody. So yeah, I basically hit the question mark, who is this for? And I came to one final conclusion. This is basically a very high-end version of CodePen. If you want to set this up for learning purposes, like educational, you could basically say, hey, we set up an environment with the right Python library, the right this, the right that, all of these things in this one template, and you can just load it up and start using it on Google's Project IDX, this is called. You can just load it up there, use it, and you don't have to set this up on your own computer to play with it. You're still going to want to if you're actually going to do the work, but if you just want to play with something, this is where you go to do it.
Right.
And once I realized that's what this was going to end up being, I pretty quickly realized no one should care. And I hate saying it that way, but this is another one of those Google projects that when you start poking at it and figuring out who's this going to appeal to, and you get down to the nitty-gritty of it, it's like, oh, this really big, probably very daunting project, it actually really is not going to have very many use cases, which means this is why it will probably die in a few years. I don't want that to happen. I think that's terrible because this is actually a really cool project. As a nerd, I love the idea of this. I think it's so cool. And at the same time, I'm sitting here like, absolutely no one's going to want to use this except for like school project kind of stuff. Or, hey, we set up a template so you can just sit down and start coding a thing and try it out. And then you should go install all this crap on your local computer and be good to go. Like, sorry, but that's the painful reality here.
And this doesn't really have like very much functional overlap with Google's thing, but I do also want to mention that VS Code has like some really cool remote stuff in it already.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing you can do is run VS Code with whatever dev environment you've got set up or whatever, and then start up VS Code on another computer and just remote in. and it's not just like a remote desktop thing. It's like all the like UI stuff is working on your local machine, so it's a lot more responsive than like a remote desktop. And it's just a like normal window. You can resize it and move it around and stuff. Um, I've used that. I think I've only used it once because I wanted to test Nexus tools on ARM Linux, um, which it never got working, but I wanted to try it out. And I don't have a like ARM Linux like computer. Like I have Raspberry Pis, but it's like I think it was like the ARM V7. I needed like ARM V8 or whatever, something like that. But I had my Pine phone that's ARM Linux, so I installed VS Code on the phone, and of course I can't use that on a phone. So I set up the remote tunnel. It worked fine. It was slow because it's a phone, but it did work. And they also do have vscode.dev in the browser, which I think works with that remote stuff. I think there's more limitations there because web browsers can't access your local network unless they found a way around that I don't know about. But I mean, you can use it to like edit files like local in your computer or stuff. You probably can't do a lot of like actual development in the cloud thing because it needs to hook into a compiler somewhere else. But it does exist. I've used it for a lot of text editing when I'm like on a Windows machine and I like need like a good text editor. I'm like I don't really want to bother like downloading something right now. I'm just gonna pull this up.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
So anyway, I find myself just looking at this and I'm sad that there's a really neat project that I'd even love to say nice things about, but at the same time it's like I just don't know that anyone's going to find a use for it outside of, again, pre-set up templates for kind of like learning purposes. And then of course Google's big push for this is it's also going to be it's going to have AI, so you'll be able to do the neat things like write a function to do this and comment that and summarize what these things do. That's neat. I appreciate it, but I feel like if they wanted to do this, they could have just as easily done it as plugins that would run in existing IDEs, and that would be probably
Microsoft
better.
is done.
Yeah, Microsoft is doing it. Other companies are also doing it. I could list a few, but
yeah, there's their Copilot thing in VS Code.
Yeah, well, yeah, Microsoft has done Copilot. There's Code.ai or something. I don't remember now. There's one of them that I started checking out, but they were a mess to use. But yeah, point is, like, this is a thing other companies are doing in ways that are more portable and usable on a machine. Google is trying to turn this into a cloud thing, and honestly, I'm not sure I can see why. I don't think it's serving them too well. So, yeah. Anyway, Google, this would have been a great project if it were just different in almost every way. The only there is one other group. I could see Chromebook users looking at this and going, "Oh, I need to make an iOS app. I don't have any other choice." At which point, okay, yeah, this is probably your best option. It's not a good one, but it's probably your best option. Yeah, anyway, so that's pretty much my whole complaint on that. Let's see.
You get to pick one more thing, and then I need to leave to go find food.
Well, I'll let you pick. CNET deleting old articles, or Disney, the Disney thing. I feel like CNET's better, but
yeah, I can do CNET. I've got words.
Yes, I felt like you would, and I'm down for this.
This is personally offensive to me, and I will explain why.
It's offensive to all of us, actually, and if it's not yet, it will be by the time we're done.
Yeah, so it seems like Gizmodo was the first to see this. The Verge also covered it. Verge really likes going after CNET.
They really do. This has become like a personal vendetta for them.
It's just like it's like in SpongeBob where like the chum bucket and the Krusty Krab are across the street and they're just like attacking each other. But so yeah, CNET is deleting thousands of older articles from its site. They sent a memo to employees that said that um, the memo said, "quote It sends a signal to Google that says CNET is fresh, relevant, and worthy of being placed higher than our competitors in search results." Um, and they said they're like they'll alert writers if like they're gonna have stuff deleted, so I guess they can archive it if they want. Um, and like the Verge talks about this a little bit, that like, and why I'm like personally offended by this is that CNET is one of a like handful of news outlets that they haven't done like an amazing job of keeping their older content available. I have noticed they have deleted stuff or like fucked up a redirect somewhere in the past, but there is not really another resource like them for technology news spanning that far back.
Yeah,
Like the
the
Verge
CNET.
mentions in their article that like they have stuff from like the 90s in there.
Yeah, CNET was
Uh,
around when I was a kid.
right, right, and like and again like when you actually go back and look at that, like a lot of it's broken text somewhere, weird formatting, because I'm sure they've changed their CMS like 16 times. But like when I'm writing tech tales stuff and I'm researching stuff, like CNET is like one of the best resources I've found because they have all that stuff still there. Um, and like that's been really great for historical checking that information. So I'm sure in a couple months, if I go look at my tech tales outlines and I do Control F for CNET, I'm gonna find a lot of broken links.
Hmm.
And again, I really don't know where this thing came from, where deleting old stuff helps SEO. I don't. If that was true, then like there would never be like a forum uh, linked on Google search results,
So
or like it's just yeah. You can go.
I do know where it comes from, and why a bunch of SEO people believe this to be true. So it stems from the fact that there is uh, Google actually has a document. Damn it! I triggered just a phone. One out of three phones and a hub. That's not bad. Um, so Google search engine does actually have what is effectively a page limit that it will do indexing on. Um, Now, this is kind of a true but not true thing. They do actually have an indexing limit, and I forget what the number is, but it's a certain number of pages that you can basically tell Google these exist, and it will index those. After you hit that point, then in theory you can't tell them about any more. Now, this there are actually a couple of different limits, actually several different limits, but one of them is how many you can put into a sitemap. For those that know about like web development, you know what a sitemap is. I won't try to explain it. For those that don't know what it is, the best explanation I'm going to give you is it's like the not a table of contents, but the index at the back of a book. Is it index? Is that the right term? Whatever. Anyway, uh, textbooks, you'd always go to the back of the book and there would be a thing to look up all the different topics and what pages they're on. That's effectively what a sitemap is, in a sense. Um,
It's like a big old list of links.
it's literally just a list of links. Actually, I guess technically now there's metadata in there. Sitemap 1.0 was literally just a list of links. Anyway, yeah, so the thing is, Google now also supports, and I think all the other search engines do, too, you can actually give them multiple sitemaps. And so whatever the limit on the sitemap is, you can effectively go past it by just giving them multiples. Um, and there is also supposedly an upward limit to the number of URLs Google will track for a site. However, no one knows exactly what that limit is. And the existence of the New York Times, like, crazy long database of articles that goes back, the New York Times has actually been taking old versions of the newspaper from a century ago, and they are putting those online.
Yeah, there are New York Times articles from like the 1920s that you can find on their website. Again, I don't like the New York Times for many reasons, but like they're probably the best at this, of like actually going into their archives and they're, OCRing everything and like trying to get it in a presentable state. Like I use the New York Times constantly for tech tales too, because they've got, going back to like the 80s and stuff, for technology.
Yeah, they preserved so much stuff.
Yeah. And again, like when you go to Google and like search stuff, like New York Times is going to be up there if they've covered something. So clearly this isn't like a deal breaker for SEO.
No.
Um,
and
so it's like,
frankly, CNET does not come up hardly ever when I search for things that I would expect to appear in CNET, unless it's like a recent review, in which case CNET shows up about as well as any other site. So,
so maybe they're doing this from the perspective of like we've tried nothing and we're out of ideas. Time to delete everything.
Yes.
But yeah, like I really don't like this again because I've used CNET so many times for tech tales. It's really important to keep those archives there. Even though again they're not in the best state, like I think New York Times has done a much better job. Like when you go like find an old article from them, they actually have a screenshot of it in the newspaper. So like if they're like text formatting broke or whatever, you can just check that. But yeah, like that's there is a huge problem where, especially starting at like the night, like. So one of the resources I've used for tech tales also is called newspapers.com. It's run by the same company that does like Ancestry. And it's literally just like a database of like a bunch of scanned newspapers, and you can search for it and you can like get the screenshots of where stuff was in the newspaper. And that's been really helpful for me for like, topics in the 80s or some of the 90s. But once you get to like mid 90s to like mid 2000s and you start hitting the point where most news was like on the internet first, that's like a black hole. There's like not a lot that has survived from that point. So it's really important to have that archive there, and we're losing it, and CNET is now setting its own library on fire for questionable reasons. Again, like I really hate SEO people. I hate that whole industry.
Even before this stupid decision becoming popularized, you hated SEO people, and any good human should.
Yeah, it's literally just like it's astrology. It's literally like astrology for dudes is what it is.
Honestly, I think that's too generous. This is like throwing of bones.
Yeah, because like. So like maybe people don't know like how any of this works, but like my beef with it is that it's unprovable. It's to some degree it is like religion, because
wow.
How do you know something works, right? How do you know something's true? Well, you do like scientific method, right? You test it. Okay, what does scientific method need? It needs a control, right? You need something to prove that like something's actually different based on your experiment. Here's the problem. You can't do a control with Google search. You can't give Google two versions of the same article at the same time and be like, all right, you figure this out. First, because that's, Google filters out duplicate content. And also like the way it works is not consistent across versions, right? You could publish one article and it does nothing, and then you publish the same, and then if you didn't do that and you waited a week and it changed nothing else, Google might be like, hey, this looks great, we're going to put it in like your discover feed, it's going to do way better. Like there's no consistency in how it behaves, and Google purposefully does not tell you entirely how this works to avoid people from gaming the system. They've said some stuff like, over and over again, they're like, hey, and what works well in Google search, like quality content. How do we determine quality? Well, there's like a couple factors we'll tell you. We're not going to tell you the rest, and that changes again over and over. They change their algorithm. So because you can't test anything properly, you can't really like it's sort of unknowable. Like all you have to work with is like what worked well in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So again, to that effect, I would say it's like astrology, because it's like, ancient civilizations were like, wow, if we make a human sacrifice, it rains. That worked twice, so we're just going to keep doing it. I know that's not astrology, but it's sort of that same logic of like, hey, this kind of worked once, and like, maybe we'll keep trying it, and then that sort of advice like accumulates in like this cloud of like the SEO people networking with each other and like trying to share advice, and then that's how you end up with like 100 sites doing the same stupid shit that doesn't make any sense, because like it worked somewhere once and it got spread somewhere. So again, I really don't like that whole industry. It's like astrology. It's to a certain extent, it's also like being like a weather person. Like you can be wrong a lot and it's fine.
As long as you're right often enough that you can point to the times that you've been right and say, look at all the times I've been right, then people will believe you. And yes, that is kind of a big problem, is it's that easy to be believed.
Yes. And this deleting thing has come up a couple times. It happened at XDA while I was there. XDA deleted a bunch of old articles, and I know people who wrote articles there who were mad because some of the articles they did delete were actually pretty good. So and again, like if you work at XDA and you worked there at the time where they wiped out old articles, like great job. I hope you archived your entire previous work, because if you go to another company, you're like, hey, I worked at XDA, and they're like, oh great, can you show me what you wrote? Nope, no, you can't. Yeah. It's gone. You can give them Internet Archive links if you remember to do that, or if you're lucky enough where the Internet Archive like index something you wrote at some point. So they're saying also the other factor here too is that hosting stuff costs money, and Red Ventures has been doing a lot of cost cutting. CNET had layoffs recently. I think they had layoffs at other sites they own, I'm not sure. And theoretically you can save money by deleting old stuff, but when it comes to text, that doesn't really matter. It'd be a different story if like they were running the equivalent of like YouTube and they had like many terabytes of videos like eating up bandwidth somewhere, but I don't think they do.
Okay,
they're mostly talking about like old articles here.
Yeah, strictly speaking, CNET actually does have a crap load of old videos. They were producing video content years and years ago. So to their
yes, some of that is online. I don't think like nearly all of it is.
Oh no, I'm sure hardly any of it is. But so strictly speaking, yes, technically they do have that. This is not what they're talking about. Yeah, this is focused entirely on the articles. And hosting old articles, I'm actually going to disagree, kind of. Does it cost money to keep those around? Yes, it technically does. As in, sure, you're going to pay for a couple of extra hard drives. If you're willing to burn a few $100 on having a couple of hard drives in a RAID array, Go grab yourself a couple of 8 terabyte drives, stuff those in. 8 terabytes, I guarantee, holds all of CNET's history pre 2010. Easy, easy,
and,
guaranteed.
and yeah, and
Images
then
and text, no question.
right. And again, if this is about SEO and you actually care about what you bring, the other option here is Google has there is a magical HTML tag that says, Google, do not look at this page. Don't index it. Don't look at it. This is not, this isn't here. I've used that a lot when I'm like making a test page and I like don't want it to show up in Google search results. Literally just add that to all of your old stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then problem solved. And then ideally after that, you would make your own, like,
your own search engine.
Right. Yeah. Like just search engine for that. That's,
and at the very least, you're not breaking links that point to your site already.
Those can still be on the website in the exact place they are now. You just add that one line of code that says, Google, don't look at this, and then you would remove it from your site maps, probably. So again, like, there's a lot of options here that they aren't doing. They're just doing this haphazardly in the hopes that it will boost their SEO. And it's incredibly frustrating. Again, I don't like that industry. It's ugh. So yeah, I'm mad about this because I've used CNET over and over again for tech tales, and now I'm sure when I go back in 2 months, a lot of those things will be dead. Hopefully they're on Internet Archive. I don't know. And again, every time this happens, right? Like when I don't. There's Flickr just deleted a bunch of their old images. Imgur is said a few months ago that they would start to delete old images that weren't attached to an account. Every time that happens, there is a mass automated archival to Internet Archive. Like, people are like, all right, we need to save this, dump it on Internet Archive. So, and then Internet Archive is like, now they need more money to keep running because they're where the end product is, where when companies like CNET don't want to post their own content anymore, that falls onto Internet Archive and other sites like that. So then they need more resources, and then keeps exacerbating the problem. So this is just a chain reaction of stupid. That's really annoying to see over and over again. And CNET is especially an egregious case here because they were whenever I do tech tales, that's the resource I have for 90s tech. It's that and a couple there, other legacy media brands. A few of them are good at this too. Again, New York Times is good. I've got a lot of stuff from LA Times in the past. They're pretty good about archiving. But yeah, when it comes to tech, there's not a lot of stuff that's survived in an easily indexable manner. A lot of it was in magazines that may or may not be archived anywhere. So yeah, it sucks.
Yeah. Also, really quick, just to go back and beat up on the subject of it does cost money to maintain the old content. To be fair, every time, if you just have, say, I don't know, 10,000 page loads of that old content, the new ads that you are serving with that old content, guaranteed it's now paying the cost of maintaining all of that old content. You don't have to have that many page loads for that old content to be paid for. So they're actually giving up money by getting rid of old content, and they're not going to gain any SEO for doing it. Not realistically. So, yeah.
And if they, again, wanted to preserve this at all, it's the most stupid easy thing to do, Cloudflare caching on.
Yes.
Plain text website. That's that's going to cost you almost nothing in server bills to keep up.
Yeah.
Again, a lot of solutions to this that aren't just wiping a valuable resource from existence, but only like the 15th stupid thing Red Ventures has done. And
this week.
this episode of RambleCast will be deleted after the podcast in case I need to apply to work over there at some point.
Oh, I'll just make this part disappear.
Okay. There's like a please stand by like TV ad over like the 30-minute block.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, so anyway, the short and long of it is CNET bad. CNET continues to be bad in new and ingenious ways.
To be clear, a lot of very smart, talented people at CNET.
Yes.
This is a
this is a bad management decision.
This is bad management, bad SEO department decision.
Yeah.
I know a few people at CNET. They're very nice. Don't bully them. They're not the ones putting the auto on. In fact, on How to Geek, I'm not the one putting the auto playing video ad on my articles. I promise.
Yes.
If it was up to me, that wouldn't be there.
Yeah, and I think it's worth also just kind of expounding on the fact that most of the writers probably detest this change because it is their work getting destroyed.
Yeah, I mean that's what happened when XDA deleted articles. Like I know people who work there who were like, "Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Thanks for that." My work is gone now, especially because I don't think XDA told anyone they were doing it. Certainly not people who worked there before, because it's like a lot of websites. It was just freelancers, whoever was around at the time. Don't have probably moved on to other places.
Yeah, and I'll even take the opportunity to complain. Look, I write for a site. When the new owners came in, a lot of old articles, their formatting was completely obliterated. Images were lost, especially anything that was in GIF format was just eliminated. So yeah, I mean, I'm coming from a position where I had nearly 10 years worth of work that became really amateur and broken looking because of new owners just changing format. The articles are still there, like the writing is still present, but so much of it is gone and it is never going to be recovered. Some of it, yes, is in the Internet Archive, but it's a trivial amount, and I'm not going to go from article to article checking which ones, trying to figure out what is relevant, and it's not practical. So yeah, if I'm trying to apply for anything, I kind of just have to point to current work, which to be fair, if you've checked what the expectations are from the site these days, I also don't want to point to current work either. So yeah, that it makes it worse for everybody in assorted ways. So the world sucks.
Yes.
Always fun to have that kind of an ending to this subject.
And that's a good time for me to leave.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah.
Now that you've complained about our employer.
I mean, technically, I only complained about what happened after our employer came along.
Okay.
A distinction without a difference. Anyway, so with that, Corbin, I know you're planning on taking off, so thanks for coming by. Thanks for chatting. Everyone should go check out the spacebar.news, or is it spacebar.news?
Spacebar.news.
Yes.
Yes. Go check it out and subscribe, please. That is all.
All right. Well, take it easy, and I will catch you in the next one.
All right. Goodbye.
Okay. So let's move me a little more in frame. Okay. So we have a couple more topics to hit, kind of. It was mentioned, let's see, in the RambleCast chat. Austin dropped in a link to the Google rolling out the unknown tracker alerts on Android. Um, is there something specific in this that I should be noticing? I kind of tried to look at this and then I got sidetracked. Um, let's see. So, da, da, da. So this, of course, is for detecting AirTags, and fairly soon this will be for detecting other trackers. Um, Carson saying doesn't think he has a setting yet. Okay, so to check that this system is running, open your phone settings app. I'm gonna do this now. Let's see, settings, safety and emergency. That feels like a weird place to put this. I feel the need to say that too. Let's see. And then there should be a new unknown tracker alerts menu. Oh, I do have that. Okay, it is on. By default, I would assume. It is rolling out. Meanwhile, works to detect Apple AirTags, though that may change in the future. I'm sure this will obviously catch on to other things someday. Awesome. No, it's just a PSA. Okay. Let's real quick do a scan now. Checking for trackers. Dun 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 dun. So, what do you do if there's like 15? And you live in the middle of nowhere and don't have any AirTag trackers? Sorry, it's 13. I'm kidding. No. No, there's nothing out here. It'd be so weird if there was, honestly. Man, I would actually be concerned if there was even one. But anyway, yeah, if you live in an apartment in New York, that would be pretty normal. Yeah, FBI is about to bust your door. If the FBI is using AirTags, wow. Talk about that would be an interesting choice. But yeah, anyway, so okay, this is a cool thing to know, and also I may as well note that I am going to be doing some at least one review for the Android-based trackers when those come out. I have been put in contact with Chipolo, so I should be reviewing that one. I am also possibly going to be reviewing, sorry, I need to look up the name of the other one, because neither one of them has good names. I'm sorry. Chipolo is kind of memorable, kind of. The other one is, I would argue, not so great. Pebble Bee is the other one. So it's unclear if I'll be doing Pebble Bee. And yes, I agree, after looking into it, Pebble Bee definitely does seem like the better one of the two, just because rechargeable, and honestly, I like their form factor, or they have 3 form factors, where Chipolo is only 2 form factors. Also, and I know that this is like the most trivial of things, but Pebble Bees are also dark, where Chipolos are white. I kind of prefer the dark. I think they're not as obvious, and this is a thing that it's not like I want this to be a hidden thing, but I want it to not be distracting, and I feel like white stuff tends to be more distracting. Wow, could that be taken out of context? Anyway, but yeah, the rechargeable battery, it just seems like the better choice. Let's see. The louder speaker, I'm not sure that one is tested yet, but yeah, all the rest of it I believe was pretty much a given. So yeah, anyway, I should be reviewing the Chipolos at least, and the way that it was discussed, I'll probably Possibly. I can't say probably. There's one other person who might do the review for Pebblebee, or it might just go to me and I'll just do both. It's unclear which will happen. So yeah. Anyway, unintentionally you gave me a opportunity to acknowledge or announce that. But hey, good thing that the ability to check for trackers is out there. The one thing that kind of jumps out at me is, why is this not a why is this a thing that you have to go into settings, safety, emergency, and unknown trackers and alerts? Why do you have to go all the way into here when this is very clearly something that should have a smart or a quick settings tile? I'm checking right now just to make sure that there is not one, because after all, we could be surprised and it turns out that one might exist. Let's see. I'm not seeing. Nope. There's nothing in here that appears to be one. So yeah, that seems like a thing that if you want to have a manual scan or the ability to turn this on or off, you should have a quick settings tile for this. Google, get on it. Carson, you really wanted the Android trackers to ship before you travel later this month? Well, when do you travel? Because, I mean, it's depending on when you travel. I mean, this is still just the 9th. And if Google has now rolled this out at all, there's a decent possibility that they might greenlight shipping the trackers within the next, I don't know, within the next week or two, or days, maybe. You go on the 24th. Yeah, let's be honest, maybe they will ship or start shipping within the next few days. Or at least announce it. So if by chance, if they were to announce they're going to open up and start shipping, if they announce it within the next couple of days and start shipping within, let's say, Monday of next week, you'll definitely get your tracker before then. You place your order, but you're going to cancel if it doesn't ship in time. Yeah, I would too. But yeah, they do have time. So now that Google has shoved this out the door, I know for a fact Chipotle said they were delaying until the network was live. Presumably, well, okay, actually I take that back. We don't know that the network is live. Google has just put out the ability to check for trackers, which is a far cry from the network being live. It just means local scanning, but aren't they waiting on Apple? Okay, so here's the thing. To my understanding, the thing they were waiting on Apple for was not cross compatibility of networks. They were waiting on Apple to support or they were waiting on being able to fully scan for Apple's AirTags, and I believe for Apple to be able to scan for supported by Google, whatever those are called. Let's see. They're going to be called, let's go to here. Google's Find My Device. Works with Google's Find My Device. Come on. These names are so terrible, but okay. Anyway, I think they were waiting on Apple to be able to scan for those. I'm not sure that there was supposed to be a cross-network support. In other words, I don't believe that the plan was that they were supposed to be able to, if an AirTag comes close enough to an Android device, but there are no Apple devices around, would that report back to Apple servers? And likewise, would something that works with Google's Find My Device, would that be able to hop Apple devices. I don't believe that that was a condition of the wait. I could be wrong. Let's see. Carson, you bet Apple's gonna wait until iOS 17? That could... Okay, first off, I don't think iOS 17, right? Like, what's the current iOS? It's 15, isn't it? And then 16 is in beta? Or am I a generation ahead? Let's see. Wikipedia iOS versions. Yes, I'm totally just pulling it up from here. Oh, wow. Okay, I'm behind. Why did I think it was that? Anyway, okay, so iOS 17 is coming late 2023. So yeah, I suppose that could be a thing that rolls out in September. Maybe. So yeah, I guess it could be next month, but I feel like Google would be dumb to wait on Apple to release something. So, you know, if they release it now, and it wouldn't be that risky or dangerous or questionable if Google released something now and it took like a month or so for Apple to officially roll out their support for this thing. And strictly speaking, if Apple wants to, they can obviously roll this out ahead of time. They could roll it out in a patch. They have that capability. I'm sure that this is something they've had working for a while already. If they're delaying it, like, that's them intentionally avoiding rolling it out just to hurt Google. So yeah, that would be pretty unacceptable. I don't accept that as a argument. So yeah, Google should, in theory, like, we know the network is functional. We know it exists. It's unclear when they will officially roll it out. And I'm assuming that they probably had something that they were pushing Apple to finish up, or maybe they were waiting on Apple to give them something. I'm not sure what, but regardless, I certainly will see, but I feel like it shouldn't be too long from now, one would assume. Anyway, so yeah, that's a thing. We'll see what happens. I'm for your sake, I'm certainly hoping that they get their act together and get this shipped quickly, but yeah, I guess it is possible we won't see it until sometime next month. Which, strictly speaking, for my benefit, that would actually be a little bit better. But yeah, I'd also rather that they need to get it shipped, and that way I can start working on the review track, or the tracker review, right away. Let's see. So anyway, Corbin brought this up. I don't think I really have anything to say on this, but Disney is actively checking into cracking down on password sharing. Yeah, I really don't have anything to say on this. Netflix already did it. I assume Disney's going to do the same thing or very similar. Basically, if the usage is not coming from the same household, they'll probably offer some sort of a thing where you can share your account, but you pay extra to do so. And if you otherwise, like, they'll probably just block anyone from doing it. I don't think there's much else to I don't think there's much else to say on that. Or at least I don't have any real opinions here. I think Disney will take a bit of a public slap for it, and then people are just going to say, well, that sucks, guess we're paying more. There's probably not much of a different way for that to go, right? That's what happened with Netflix. Like, Netflix lost some small percentage of subscribers, but most people stuck around, and their stock went up. and their income went up. Like, it was good for Netflix to do this, from Netflix's perspective. So yeah, I'm just not seeing much to say about that. Damn it. My Pixel 6 Pro just pops up this thing saying, new sign in. And I'm like, wait a second, what? I didn't just sign into an account. That's weird. Why is it telling me this? And then I see, oh, this is a notification from 10 days ago that for whatever reason just popped back up. Thanks, guys. Thank you. That was super useful. All right. Anyway, so I actually only have one other topic left, and it is admittedly kind of a let's mock something. But The Verge reported. Oh, if anyone has anything else, feel free to drop it into the RambleCast chat room or YouTube comments if you have link rights, as most listeners or most of the long-time listeners do. But anyway, so Twitter has been fined $350,000 for taking too long to hand over January 6th data. I'm just gonna say, for Mr. Free Speech, who does not believe in free speech, who is also trying to find ways to cut costs and somehow is blowing money at the same time on really stupid things, it's really amusing to see them get fined a huge amount of money and, you know, have to basically pay on this when they're making such a stink about how much it costs to keep running Twitter. $350,000 is admittedly kind of a small, almost token charge. It's trivial. I mean, for a company that spends, supposedly they were spending $3 million a day on server costs. So $350,000 is chump change. But still, it's just so striking to me that this company cannot seem to ever find a way to get anything right, cannot find itself a win to save its life, and is now even just basically giving up more money just because it's fun. I don't know, like, I don't even have more words for this. I just needed to make fun of that. Let's see. So it's funny, Corbin and I, we were going through the topics before starting the stream, and we both agreed kind of on how much we wanted to cover, and we almost hit the full amount. I hit the Twitter thing I added myself, and obviously the thing about the trackers was added midstream. But the Disney thing was the only thing he actually didn't stick around for. So we did a pretty good job of picking topic count. Let's see. Austin, someone from future could have stolen your identity from the past. What's that in reference to? And also, identity theft has become one of the new things at Twitter. Oh, the SanDisk thing. Yeah, okay. I have a little bit to say on it, but not a lot. God damn, this chair just popped again. Wait. All right. So yeah, the SanDisk thing. SanDisk always sucked. Okay, so a few things on this. First off, SanDisk Western Digital. I guess because this is both. I guess let's pull that up just for the sake of having the backdrop. Because The Verge just kind of dunked on them pretty hard. And I saw this earlier too. Apparently Petapixel has been chasing after this issue. Let's see if that's linked down here. It probably should be. No, it isn't. Why not? Come on, Verge. Let's pull it up in here. If I just search Petapixel, yep. So yeah, this was also brought up. Petapixel is no longer recommending SanDisk portable SSDs, and for them to tank on Petapixel is, or for them to tank on Western Digital and SanDisk is a pretty big deal. For those that don't know, Western Digital and SanDisk are now basically the same thing. SanDisk bought Western Digital a few years ago. I forget how long. And let's see. Carson, is this the same one? Yeah, that's the same one. Okay. But yeah, they're basically the same company now. And I believe manufacturing is even taking place at the same facilities. Anyway, so there's a lot of background on this one. It's funny because the issue they're specifically talking about is that the SSDs are starting to basically just become inaccessible. The reasons seem to be, to some extent, blamed on firmware, but it might not be firmware. It seems like it might be a hardware issue because it's a randomly failing thing, not just something that's like happening as a result of an update or whatever. Regardless, the problems are becoming increasingly clear as SanDisk is basically kind of not offering any sort of response or useful response, and Western Digital is apparently just like, yo, we don't even answer email anymore. So yeah, this has become an ongoing issue. As it mentions, Petapixel's been trying for months to speak with Western Digital, so that's obviously a really, really bad situation. Let's see. Yeah, Petapixel SanDisk portable SSDs are failing so frequently we can no longer recommend them. Yeah, that's a pretty damning statement, and there are very few photography sites that are considered as credible as Petapixel. So yeah, if they're saying it, this is going to absolutely demolish a big chunk of SanDisk and Western Digital's reputation, and as a result, income, because a lot of the biggest users of these products happen to be photographers. And so if they're not going to buy this stuff, and especially if some of them start returning it, that's going to cost a fortune for the company. David, it's crazy to see Western Digital just avoid the issue. Yeah, because I mean, realistically, this is to put it simply, this is probably the only chance they're going to have to not stop or prevent, but minimize the class action lawsuit that's coming. That's an absolute fact. If they're not, every minute that they don't respond, they are basically begging people to sue them, and more and more people are going to. There are going to be lots and lots of people who get really, really irritated and pissed off about this, and they're definitely going to be forming a class action lawsuit. So that said, this is a ridiculous situation. It's hard to imagine that any company would not be trying to run damage control, and Western Digital itself has already had a really bad year. Let's see. Western Digital NAS. And let's go with hack. All right. I guess we could use. Who are we gonna use for this? Sure. We'll use Bleeping Computer. I don't know if they're any good or not, but yeah, so back in April, actually I believe it started in March, some hackers went in and basically tanked the MyCloud service, which effectively tanked all Western Digital NAS devices. This is a massive thing. They killed so many people's NAS systems doing this. And as a result, Western Digital was putting out fires just in that alone. Like they were eating big time failure with this. And it reached the point, because it ended up taking, I think, about 2 weeks to really fully restore service. I know it at least crossed 10 days. And so that's a long time for people to not be able to access their data. And this isn't just photographers. This is people in any kind of situation where they might have been using a NAS. There's some chance that they were using Western Digital. And as NAS devices go, Western Digital is not the most popular. In fact, it's kind of low on the list. At this stage, Synology is kind of a number one choice. There is oh geez, why am I suddenly blanking on names? There's some people using Drobo. I don't think that one's too big of a thing. Let's see. Who's the one I just reviewed? I am totally blanking on the name of it. It will come to me in just a second because I'm scrolling through my old articles and I reviewed it. TerraMaster. TerraMaster has been coming up pretty rapidly in the game. And I don't know if they would have surpassed Western Digital yet, but probably. I don't think Western Digital has been really doing super well with their NAS service. And then even a couple of other newer companies like Ositor, which is a subsidiary of Asus, they've been coming up kind of rapidly in this game. Basically, like, yeah, Western Digital has not really been competing very well in this. But the fact that they had that catastrophe just a few months ago, and now their SSDs are failing, and SanDisk SSDs are failing. Like, this is a really bad time for a company whose whole thing is storage to be failing its storage. These are some of the biggest names in storage, and they're failing at storage. How does that happen? You can't have this. You absolutely can't have this. This is like I can't believe I get to make this comparison, but this is like when a car fails to brake. Toyota. For those that don't remember, Toyota had a thing where their cars would stop braking sometimes. Is Seagate solid? I mean, right now they're probably the best of the mainstream brands. I've never had a very positive opinion of Seagate. I've had not a drive failure, but I've had little issues with Seagate in the past. So it's not who I would necessarily choose, but they are an option for sure. Let's see. If I was going to look for anything for comparison, the first thing I would do is go to, oops, I thought I'd already clicked on. Oh, I guess I hadn't. I would recommend looking at the Backblaze drive stats. For anyone who doesn't know, Backblaze is a online backup service. Basically, you can install software on your computer. It does backups to the cloud to Backblaze's servers. And Backblaze, very, very nicely, they post their full failure rate like analysis for all the drives that they buy. And they post it by model number, drive size, how many drives they've had, what percentage of them fail, and at what age they fail. Like, they post some great data about this. Like, it is so cool that they do this. So yeah, I would recommend, if you're shopping for drives and want something that's going to last a while, take a look at these stats and see what they say. Now, granted, Backblaze is doing something different. Like, these drives are online 100% of the time, whereas something that we're using might not be as extensively used. And obviously, this is also a difference between SSDs versus regular drives. I know Backblaze does use some SSDs, but I think they're using more spinning disk. I could be wrong. I don't know that they have SSDs covered in this list. It's possible they do, but I'm not sure. Actually, I am sure, now that I think about it. Yeah, they definitely cover SSDs. As of the end of Q1 2023, Backblaze was monitoring 241,678 hard drives and solid-state drives in our data centers around the world. Of that number, 4,400 are boot drives with 3,038 SSDs and 1,362 hard disk drives. And that's just of their boot drives. Failure rates for the SSDs are analyzed in the SSD Edition 2022 drive stats. So there you go. If you want the SSDs, go check there. I guess the better thing to link here. This is a better link. That takes it to the drive stats page. And so the fact they do this is super cool. Huge thanks to Backblaze for this. Also, if Backblaze would ever like to sponsor, get in touch. I don't use your service yet, but I wouldn't mind trying it, and I would be perfectly happy to shill. Anyway, but yeah, that said, if you're even considering something for NAS purposes, go get like Synology or something. Go buy an actual NAS hard drive, and Synology makes really good ones. I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe Toshiba has been a very good performer for NAS hard drives too. Let's see. Average age. Okay, the AFR. What's the AFR on most of the Toshibas? Oops. Oh, that's an image. Damn you. Okay, one Toshiba drive has a really high failure rate. The 14, that one 14 terabyte drive there. But oof, there's some Seagate drives in there that are hitting really high. The highest one is at 7.46%. That is bleak for some Seagate drives. So yeah, anyway, I would recommend checking this. There's obviously no guarantees, and the usage is very different for Backblaze versus anybody else. But yeah, it's probably the best source you're gonna find for like reliability. Anyway, yeah, I just don't know anything more damning again than the fact that both SanDisk and Western Digital, two companies whose entire reputations are based on storage, are basically just failing to do storage. Like, that is the absolute worst thing that you can have. You should not fail to this level. David, the biggest issue is finding something reliable and portable. Yeah. And generally speaking, like, portability, that's where SSDs were particularly good, because a spinning disk has its own obvious problem with the fact that, you can have portable spinning disks, but they have a very notable problem where you bump them too hard, drop them, anything like that, and you probably will destroy that disk. I have personally done this once, and yeah, that sucked. Very literally, I kid you not, the drive survived the fall only well enough that I could plug it in, and like it was usable long enough that I could get a listing of the files that were on the drive, and I did manage to recover a few of the files. And as I was doing this, I could hear it grind, literally grinding as it was scraping away some of the surface of the drive. So I know a little bit about this. It is a thing. So yeah, SSDs on the other hand, short of taking those things and whacking with a baseball bat, they usually weigh so little that it doesn't matter if they fall. So yeah, anyway. I don't know what else to say on this, but it's just it is profoundly amazing to me that the main thing this company does is basically kind of going up in smoke right now. And it is like, if I could, I would short their stock, because it is just so clear that they're not handling this well, and it's just going to keep hurting them more. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm not yeah, I just don't know what else to say about it. So let's see. Really quick, hitting a couple of other points. Let's see. Am I? Yeah, I'll just zoom in. Okay, so as for game streams this weekend, unless someone has any other last second topics, let me know if there are. As for game streams this weekend, as you can probably see from the weather behind me, right now Saturday is a very iffy maybe. Sunday is a no. Now the weather may change, it's possible, but right now I'm basically going on the presumption that if it hits 90, it's really iffy. 93 fits into that iffy category. If it's over 95, it's probably a no. And then next week is a real problem zone for me. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, those are some over 100-degree days. Now, Carson, go watch Spider-Verse. However you should happen to be able to watch it, yes, go watch Spider-Verse. Anyway, so at this stage, I'm not 100% certain there will be a RambleCast next week. I will have to get back to you guys on that one, because 102 temperature, it kind of depends a little bit on how the day starts, but it's also notable that a big part of how I manage the temperature in this house usually is reliant on opening the windows at night and flushing as much air through the house as possible to cool off the rooms. This does quite a bit of good as long as it gets cool enough at night. It's going to be on those nights basically hovering just below 70 degrees, which would be great if it were a daytime temperature and not the nighttime temperature. Sonicast, for real. Carson, well, you are in Texas, and Texas gets certainly more brutal summers than we do, generally at least. Anyway, so yeah, I don't know what else to say, but next week is going to be pretty iffy. I don't know that I can do a 102-degree day RambleCast. Right now, it's pretty tolerable at 80 on an 86-degree day, or 85 as it supposedly is right now. I think if we add 15-ish degrees to that, it starts becoming a lot less realistic. So anyway, just putting that out there. Next week, I wouldn't blame anyone for making other plans for the day. I may try to come up with some other ideas or something clever to do. I don't know. But in the meantime, no promises. And unfortunately, the same is kind of true for game streams. If that changes, I will announce it, or say something more. Again, Saturday, up in the air. Shorten the streams if needed. I am considering that. Yeah. The other thing I was toying around with, though, Corbin wouldn't be able to make it for this, but I was also considering maybe doing something earlier in the day. I don't know if that's entirely practical either. That one will depend on schedule. So I don't know. Anyway, for right now, it's hard to say, and I will try to do my best to come up with a good idea, but I don't know for sure what they will be yet. So yeah. I wish I had a better answer, but that's kind of where we're at. Thank you, global warming, for making everything harder. Yeah, so I think that about wraps it up. Thank you all for coming by, hanging out, and being part of the conversation. Thank you for keeping us talking, and of course, thank you to Corbin for coming by and chatting. I would do the typical spiel about supporting the channel, but I believe everyone watching right now is a Patreon sub. Oh, Carson, I have actually mentioned you twice already on stream saying thank you, and I guess you just weren't around for it. So thank you again for joining the Patreon. That's awesome. Also, of course, thank you to Austin, David, and Diablo for having been Patreon subscribers. You guys are all awesome. Let's see. And this is also serving as a great reminder that I need to find something to do for Patreon subscribers. I haven't fully decided on what that's going to be. But I need to do something. Or I want to do something. At a bare minimum, I'm pretty sure I'm going to give you guys access to, like, emoji or something. The Patreons... Wait, it does? Are you serious? Damn it. Oh, not that page. Hold on, let me get there. My page. Let's see. Is that under about? Oh, I do still have it in the about. Yeah, okay. Carson, yeah, the Patreon bot isn't working. Oh, wait, actually, I might know why. Okay, yeah, I need to fix that, but I wondered if it put you on or not, because the Patreon bot wasn't working before either. But they updated something and insisted that everyone's supposed to go through some special flow to reactivate the bots or whatever. I'm guessing that I don't know why. Anyway, so yeah, I need to go in and fix that link, and I will also add the Patreon role for you, which actually, can I do that from here? Yeah, I can. There we go. Added. But yeah, something that I think I'm going to do for Patreon subscribers, I mean, it's the smallest of things, but I think I'm going to give you guys all access to set custom emojis on the server, because why not? Like, you know, I'm a little nervous about what some of you might come up with, but, you know, still, why not? Anyway, so let's see. With that, yeah, like I said, I would do the normal spiel. Well, for anyone else who is listening later, after the live, there are links down below to Streamlabs, Cash App, and Patreon. You wish YouTube to allow custom emojis for live streams? I know, right? Honestly, I really wish they supported that. It's dumb that they don't. Need more Cody emotes. It's funny because I have something else I've wanted to do for a long time. I haven't done it yet, but well, I'll surprise you guys one of these days when I do it. There will be a thing. Anyway, so yeah, for those who aren't already, there are links down below. Streamlabs, Cash App, Patreon. Check them out. They're good places to go if you'd like to support the channel. Again, huge thanks to those who do already. I will be trying to come up with something else new to share fairly soon. I have a couple of ideas. In fact, there's something I definitely want to do for Patreon subscribers, but it's not happening immediately. So yeah, ideas, but they need to be fleshed out. But yeah, with that, I'm going to leave this room and go cool off in another space. I hope you all the best for the rest of the week. Austin, get well soon. Let's see, and and I have something I'm probably going to be doing regarding movies fairly soon. I will share more on that fairly soon as well. And yeah, it'll be fairly obvious as soon as I do. But okay, with that, thank you all for coming by, and I'll see you in the next one. Good night, everybody.